I hate the word ma'am.
Excuse me, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. You have to wait your turn, ma'am.
Every time a stranger calls me ma'am, I think, am I old? I hate absolutely everything about this word, from the nasally sound of it,
Ma'am, ma'am, ma'am,
to its matronly battle axe connotations. Why, oh why, you have to wonder, does this god-awful word exist? Let's find out. Hey humans, I'm Montell, and this is The Dirty Word, where sex and language get it on. Today I want to talk about my profound contempt for the word ma'am, in addition to pretty much all other common terms of address for women, like miss to belittling, sweetheart, honey, and sugar, patronizing, too familiar. But frumpy, dowdy, old ladyish ma'am has to be the one that irks me the most. And I'm not alone here. I asked about a dozen of my friends how they feel about the word ma'am, and most of them detest it just as much as I do for the very same reasons. So what gives? To figure out why the hell we all hate ma'am so much, first let's figure out where the word originally comes from. According to dictionary.com, the word first emerged around the mid-1600s in British English as a colloquial shortening of madam, and it was used as a term of respect for married women. What's interesting is that in British English, the word later restricted to apply only to nobility, like the queen or princesses. Today, you would almost never hear a person in England call a regular woman ma'am. It would be too formal, inappropriate. But in American English, it's a different story. First, I want to point out that the full-length version of ma'am, madam, which was once the female equivalent of sir, has almost completely fallen out of use in everyday conversation here in the US. I can't help but think that this might have something to do with the fact that this word has devolved from that original meaning to refer to a woman who runs a brothel. You know, that kind of madam. This is not the only example of a respectful term of address for a woman contaminating over the years to eventually mean something sexual. A similar thing happened with the terms master and mistress, which were once both used to refer to male and female heads of household respectively. The male term master maintained its positive meaning. We can hear that in master bathroom, master bedroom. It can also mean someone who's an expert of their craft, master chef, karate master. Only the female term, mistress, devolved over time to eventually mean a woman with whom a married man has adulterous sex. Indeed, no English term for a woman is safe from being sexualized. But I digress. Long story short, now ma'am is what American English speakers use to address a woman they don't know. But not any woman, specifically an older, married-looking one. Younger, unmarried-looking women are addressed as miss. The troublesome part in all of this is that what these two words indicate is that a woman's marital status and age are of public concern and importance, as if her very identity depends on whether or not she's young and up for grabs or old and taken. Getting called ma'am or miss is anxiety-provoking, frankly, because as American women, we don't want to be perceived as old, because in Western society, old women are undesirable pariahs. But we don't want to be thought of as too young or unworthy of respect either. Meanwhile, dudes get to just fly under the radar with unassuming sir, which is age neutral and marital status neutral and just better. Back to ma'am. It's worth mentioning that not all American English speakers find this word as odious as I do. There are actually some notable differences in how this word is used and perceived in northern American states versus the South. In southern states, it's customary to call any woman, regardless of her age, ma'am, and it's seen as a polite and expected courtesy. In addition to calling strangers ma'am, you would use it for your teacher, your mother-in-law, even young girls. The female friends of mine who live in the South tell me that they don't take issue with ma'am or find it as unflattering as the friends of mine who live in the North do. In fact, to my Southern friends, the term miss is often much more objectionable, as it can be seen as disrespectful. The rules of courteous language in the American South are just a little bit different overall. We can also see that in how calling a stranger something like honey or sweetheart is perceived. Where I live in California, most women find these words kind of creepy and demeaning when coming from strangers. They're seen as sort of intimate nicknames that you might use with a significant other or a child. Ultimately, it's kind of like If you wouldn't compare a man you didn't know to a sugary dessert item, don't do it to me, you know? However, in New Orleans, where a lot of my family members live, calling a stranger, male or female, one of these desserty names, honey, sugar, usually would not be perceived so negatively. The rules of linguistic politeness can differ hugely from language to language and culture to culture too. A bilingual friend of mine recently told me that in Vietnamese, there is a very complex system of address terms that depends on your relationship to the person you're talking to, their age, birth order, and gender, and the dynamics of courtesy are all wrapped up in those different qualifiers. Because this friend of mine is familiar with Vietnamese culture, where respect for your elders is very important, unlike American culture, which values its youth over its elderly, she is another person who sees ma'am as a term of deference instead of offense. Regardless, I still think ma'am and most other gendered terms of address are disputable and ultimately kind of unnecessary. Not only do they make millions of women feel awkward and self-conscious, but by using gendered terms of any kind, you could end up misgendering a person completely by accident. And if women hate being called ma'am, you can guarantee that people who aren't women will like it even less. It really seems like doing away with sir and ma'am and replacing them with a gender-neutral term of address that could apply to everybody would be a logical and simple solution. So with the help of some internet friends of mine, I took the liberty of coming up with a list of a few options. Some of these are more realistic than others, but in the future, instead of saying "excuse me ma'am" or "step aside ma'am," these words could be interesting alternatives. Friend, guest, partner, mate,
Good eye.
tis, captain, serum, latum, your highness. Or you could just avoid using a term of address altogether. Usually, excuse me or step aside will convey the message just as well without that pesky ma'am attached. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of The Dirty Word, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you also hate the word ma'am? What word would you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, stay dirty.